Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This is the Sikh History Series Podcast, Episode 7, The Shaheedi of Bhai Mehtab Singh. In this episode of the podcast, we will be jumping slightly forward in time from the last episode, where following the decapitation of Masarangar, the Mughal forces went on a rampage searching for Jathedar Mehtab Singh, and going to his village, they attacked his young infant son Rai Singh, whom after a small battle and cavalry charge, and the trampling and killing of the child's protector and village Sarpanch, the Honourable Natha Khera, his son, nephew and attendant. They then strike down at the child. The infant child is hit 3 times with a sharp sword on the head, his skull, neck and body. They believe to have killed him, but through the kirpa and grace of the Satguru, the infant child Rai Singh survives. The Mughal forces continue to search for the venerable Mehtab Singh, and in this episode we shall learn how he gives his Shaheedi. The Shaheedi of Bhai Mehtab Singh goes hand in hand with the Shaheedi of Bhai Taru Singh Ji. Both take place together and are deeply interconnected and cannot be separated. Zakaria Khan calls for a meeting of all the governors and warlords in Punjab. He is very angry and he shouts out, "I pay out an abundance of money to get rid of the Singhs and they still survive. But not only survive, they terrorise and fight against us and kill us. We need to eradicate them from the face of the earth. We must not even allow one of them to remain." Bhagat Naranjani provides information proclaiming there are 2 Singhs whom we must target. These are the ones who are our biggest problem for us. One is that great troublemaker and bandit Jathedar Mehtab Singh, the one who 6 years ago killed our beloved brother Masarangar in cold blood and took off with his head. He lives in the jungles and forests, keeping a band of 30 to 60 warriors with him at all times. He is one of the most active amongst the Khalsa Singhs, and this Nihang holds the spirit of the Khalsa. To take him out would be to deliver the Khalsa warriors the heftiest of losses. Zakaria Khan is infuriated that Mehtab Singh still survives and hasn't been caught or killed for his actions. For 6 years I've had headhunters searching and hunting for this Singh. Zakaria orders for this to be the utmost priority in Punjab. Everyone should be hunting this Mehtab Singh. He is the most wanted in the empire. Great rewards will be given to those who capture him. Around the clock, day and night, search for him, find him, kill him, leave no stone unturned. The other is a young Sikh by the name of Taru Singh. He rebels against us and feeds the rebel Khalsa warriors. He clothes them. He is a great supporter of the Khalsa and is greatly loved and revered in his village and surrounding areas. An example must be made out of him. Zakaria Khan gives Bhagat Naranjani a large force and army to take with him to hunt down and find these Sikhs. The young Bhai Taru Singh Ji was arrested and taken to Lahore because he fed hungry Singhs, cooked and took them prashade. He was taken to Lahore to be tortured and executed. In Lahore he was locked up and slowly the torture began. He was kept hungry and gradually they began to torture him with the aim of breaking the Khalsa spirit within him. We will go over the whole prasang and episode of the life and Shaheedi of Bhai Taru Singh Ji in a later episode or season of the Sikh History Series Podcast. But today we will be focusing on the Shaheedi of Bhai Mehtab Singh Ji. Now listen to the Sakhi of my Dada and how he gained his Shaheedi. Bhai Ratan Singh Ji narrates in Pant Prakash. Har Bhagat Naranjani with a large force was out hunting for Mehtab Singh. The Mughal Sarkar had given him a large force and an abundance of supplies and reinforcements and weapons for this task, for the sole purpose of capturing Bhai Mehtab Singh, the killer of Masarangar, and many of the Mughals and high-profile generals. As the Mughals knew, Bhai Mehtab Singh was not the type of person who could be caught by a small army. They would need to pull out all the stops and use as many forces as possible to capture him. Bhai Mehtab Singh was a pure warrior, a complete warrior. He would keep a jatha of die-hard warriors with him at all times who were ever ready to fight and defend and die. It is said that even death feared Jathedar Mehtab Singh and his band of warriors. They stayed on horseback and were forever armed and ready. They were tiyar pur tiyar, forever in a state of readiness, ready to fight at any given moment. They would never be caught unaware, never be caught slipping, forever ready. They kept their kamar kasa tied at all times. The battle wear of a Khalsa is to wear a kamar kasa, a vital component of a warrior Singh. Hearing his names, the enemy would flee. If the enemy heard Bhai Mehtab Singh once used a certain path or route, they would avoid this area at all times, out of fear that they may come across the fierce warrior Singh. Young Sikh warriors, when tying their kamar kasa or putting on their shastar, would say his name. All the Khalsa warriors uttered his name as they picked up the sword. Even today in the Dal Panth, today the Singhs repeat his name as they tie their kamar kasa or take up their arms. And I have seen this firsthand living in the Dal. The pyar the Singhs have for the Shaheed Singhs is beyond immense. Day and night they meditate upon them and remember them. Many a time I recall sitting around a campfire with the Chakravarti Dal, the forever roaming and on the move Singhs in Punjab. In the evening they would sit around a fire. The younger Singhs would attentively and affectionately listen to the elder Singhs talk and tell the Sakya of the Shaheed Singhs and Singhnia. The raw emotion and pyar are just something that I cannot describe. But I see these scenes right before my eyes as I sit and reminisce about those blessed times in my life. Everything they do, they are repeating the name of the Shaheeds. I have seen it. As the Singhs comb their case with their kanga, they repeat, Dhan Bhai Taru Singh Ji, Dhan Bhai Taru Singh Ji. Before getting on their horse, they say the name of Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji and Bahadur Baba Bidhi Chand. When they cut the grass for their horses, they say the name of Bhai Man Singh Ji. Before doing a ragra, they remember the Shaheed Singhs and they say the name of Baba Deep Singh Ji and Baba Nod Singh Ji. They remember the Shaheed Singhs throughout and then do an ardas to the Shaheed Singhs. Before an akara, they say the name of Bhai Sukha Singh Ji, and picking up a dang, salotar, wooden sticks and clubs, they say the names of Bhai Garja Singh and Bhai Bota Singh. Tying their damale, they recite Damale da Salok and say the names of the Char Sahibzade, the 4 sons of Guru Gobind Singh, especially the Mahakal General Farlatari Singhs. They say Tan Tan Baba Fateh Singh Ji, Tan Tan Baba Fateh Singh Ji, whom was the first Farlatari. Singhs, in hearing the name of Bhai Mehtab Singh, would gain hope and haunsla and the warrior spirit to fight. Such was his name because he was such a warrior. Knowing Mehtab Singh would be present in a jung, the young Cobra Pachangi Singhs would fight with much more finesse and valour. They get excited to be able to take part in such a battle, fighting harder than they have ever fought before, as knowing Bhai Mehtab Singh Ji was there, they considered themselves to be undefeatable. Saying the name of Jathedar Mehtab Singh, the younger Singhs would take up their arms with so much haunsla. Saying the name of Bhai Mehtab Singh, they remained ever ready to die and fight for Sikhi and Sach. This means being ready to fight for the oppressed and downtrodden, and never shying away from righteous acts despite any and all odds. For many months, there were Mughal forces and armies searching for Bhai Mehtab Singh. The Singhs hid and lived in the deepest jungles and forests at this time. Harbhagat Ranjani and his large Mughal forces would be systematically searching the jungles. When the Mughal army would enter a jungle forest, it would do so in great fear, as they were scared to awaken or disturb a sleeping tiger, knowing that tiger to be Bhai Mehtab Singh. If Mughal forces came across any Singhs in their searches going through the jungles, they would kill them, young or old. But the Singhs, being tigers of the jungle, would take out large number of Mughals as they were being hunted and killed. Much time had passed, and the Singhs living in the deepest jungles, and the Mughal forces hunting them and searching for them. One day, one evening in the jungles, Bhai Mehtab Singh hears heart-wrenching news. Bhai Taru Singh Ji has been arrested and taken to Lahore. He was on the way and he is going to give his head. He was going to be made Shaheed. He is to be presented before the Nawab Zakriya Khan, and in Lahore he shall join the ranks of the martyrs, the Shaheeds. Bhai Taru Singh Ji will be subject to the worst of tortures and killed. Bhai Taru Singh Ji will go forth and nabah his dharam, Sikhi Kesa Swasanal, with each and every case and every breath. He will preserve the honour of Sikhi. There was not even a shadow of a doubt. The young 26-year-old Taru Singh would fold under pressure or bend the knee, following even the most severe of tortures. The Singhs of old were firm in their faith. No amount of torture or pain could turn them away from their Guru. No amount of bribes and riches could compromise their love for Sikhi. Their dharam was never for sale. They would gladly give up everything for Sikhi. In this way, Bhai Taru Singh Ji was on his way to Lahore to give his head but never his faith. His life and Sikhi would become safal, would become of worth, as he would be blessed with death for his dharam, for his Sikhi. Singhs are praiseworthy who wage righteous warfare for their dharam and the protection of the downtrodden, weak and defenceless. Singhs are praiseworthy whom fighting the evil Mughals and Turks attain Shaheedi and give their lives. Singhs are praiseworthy who sacrifice their heads for their faith. Death is inevitable, and one day we all shall die and leave this place. All who have come eventually shall leave, but those who leave this place for a righteous cause, for dharam, their coming here was worthwhile, their deaths are worthwhile. May faith and righteousness prevail. May Sikhi prevail. May our heads be sacrificed for Sikhi, so our coming here has been worthwhile. Blessed and praiseworthy is Bhai Mani Singh Ji Shaheed, whom for the sake of Sikhi was chopped to pieces and cut limb from limb. Blessed and praiseworthy is Bhai Dayal Singh Shah Sirwala, who looking after his dharam climbed down the Chowkri and was crushed to death between two stone wheels. Blessed and praiseworthy is Bhai Subeg Singh and his Pujangi, his son Sahbaz Singh, whom both climbed on the Charkriya and were crushed to death. Blessed are their charan, their feet, of these two, who while being tortured and crushed to death, with great love were doing jikare, Akala, Akala, Sat Sri Akala, Sat Sri Akala. They preserved their Sikhi while giving their lives. Blessed and praiseworthy are they whom kept their Sikh faith, who from their mouths uttered the name of the Guru while giving their lives, giving their heads for Sikhi. Bhai Mehtab Singh Ji now speaks. What have I done? These Singhs have given their Shaheedi. What have I done? These Singhs have given their Shaheedi, have given everything. What have I done? Now, for a moment, just look at this humility of Bhai Mehtab Singh, which is on another level. Bhai Mehtab Singh, who lived his whole life for Sikhi, who fought many battles and killed many enemies of the Panth, who helped many families and the downtrodden, who preserved the honour of many by putting his life on the line time and time again, who chopped off the head of Masaranga for disrespecting Sri Darbar Sahib, who lived in the jungles and never knew a good night's sleep or a good meal, who was waging war with the Mughals and training the children of the Singhs and leading them in battle. Someone of such stature, such a great battle-hardened veteran, warrior general, whose in each and every breath was for Sikhi, he says, what have I done? What have I done for Sikhi? For a moment, just compare that to us, whom really have done nothing, yet we have such inflated egos as if we are something special, such egotistical pride over nothing of value. I often reflect on this part of Bhai Mehtab Singh Shaheedi Saki, and it really humbles me, and it reminds me to stay humble, and it reminds me that I am no one, and I have done nothing of any merit. Jathedar Mehtab Singh Ji goes on to reflect. What have I done? I'm hiding in jungles, I preserve this human body, but what have I done? What have I attained? In God's court, How will I even be able to go and sit amongst my brothers and my peers, whom themselves sacrificed everything and gave their lives, gave Shaheedi for the Panth? How will I be able to sit amongst them? How will I be able to meet them once again? How will I be able to face them and see them as equals? I must go. I must leave now. I will go and give my life alongside Bhai Taru Singh. This final yatra of life we shall do together. I have survived and lived for many years. I have seen much, all I need to. Now is my time to go. Besides, this human body shall not remain forever. It's just like a clay pot and it can break at any time. The body will die. It may become ill and die, or old age may take it. It is better it is sacrificed for the Panth. It is better to use it to add honour and hold the name of Sikhi up high. Bhai Mehtab Singh goes on, why will I go and give Shaheedi? Why? Why? Because wasted is that birth, and wasted is that death of a Singh who is unable to give Shaheedi and misses the opportunity. Bhai Mehtab Singh, with absolute resolve and firm conviction, has made his decision. Me and Bhai Taru Singh Ji are brothers. We vowed when the time came we would give Shaheedi together. We would go on this final yatra together. When Bhai Mehtab Singh was hiding in the jungles with his Jatha of Singhs, Bhai Taru Singh Ji used to travel under the cover of darkness to see them, bringing them blankets, medical aid and food. Bhai Taru Singh Ji and Bhai Mehtab Singh Ji used to serve langar to all the Singhs together, and then once all the Singhs had eaten, they would sit together as one and eat out of the same iron batta, eating out of the same iron bowl. And while eating, they would talk to each other with great love. They would talk to each other with such love, pyar and affection, they became brothers. They would promise one another that when the time came to give Shaheedi, when the time came to give their lives, to die for their faith, for Sikhi, they would do so together. This was love in its purest form. Courage is inseparable from love and leads to what is the noblest of warrior virtues, selflessness, and selflessness leads to sacrifice. Selflessness produces courage because it binds men together and proves to each individual that he is not alone. The act of open-handedness invokes desire in the recipient to give back, to be selfless, to sacrifice. This selfless love between the Khalsa warriors, between Bhai Taru Singh and Bhai Mehtab Singh, meant a pact was formed. A pact was formed, a pact that they would die together. Our hero Mehtab Singh prepares for his sacrifice, to die for his brother. Bhai Mehtab Singh calls forth his band of noble and loyal warriors, and he tells them, my time to die has arrived. I will go and give my sacrifice, my head, alongside my brother. Pick yourselves another Jathedar to lead you. Continue this rebellion, this fight for righteousness and survival. Join with another Jatha of Singhs and be strong. Do not shy away from the enemy. Defeat them in battle and fight them wherever you can. Bhai Mehtab Singh, calling the Singhs close, gives them all his shastar, his weapons. My arms belong to the Panth. He gave all the Singhs different weapons. Some Singhs received swords, some received his shield, others his spear, his axe, his daggers, his gard, his knives, his chakar. All his shastras were distributed out and to be given before the other Khalsa Panth Singhs. He gave the Khalsa his horse. He keeps with him one Jangi Salotar, a wooden dang, a lathi, a heavy wooden club. He knows that if he approached the Mughals with all his shastar, he would end up killing many of them, and they would have to sniper him and shoot him dead from a distance. So he keeps with him only the heavy wooden club, the Salotar. With a Salotar I will approach the Mughal encampment and thrash a few of them before they eventually get hold of me and take me before Zakriya. At a base where Harbhagat Ranjani was searching for Bhai Mehtab Singh with his Mughal forces, Bhai Mehtab Singh himself reaches that place. He there beats to death with his Salotar a number of Mughals, cracking open their heads like coconuts, breaking arms and legs like they were mere twigs, before himself eventually throwing down his salotar and being arrested and tied up. His hands are tied in handcuffs, thick, heavy iron chains are put around his body. His feet are fixed together and chained together with thick iron and hammered into place. Thick sticks to hold him in place and to cause him immense pain and prevent him from escaping. He's then put in a cage on a cart and taken firstly towards Bend Mira Court for identification. At the arrival at this bend, all the villagers are gathered and asked to identify if this is Mehtab Singh. However, with the movement of his finger, Mehtab Singh signals for them not to do so. So they themselves do not get in any trouble for not handing him in or joining the hunting parties out to find him. The silence of the villagers saves them from any further punishment, from forced conversions and death. Harbhagat Niranjani wastes no more time and heads straight to Lahore to the Nawab, telling Nawab how they had tracked down and caught this daring, vicious and most dangerous warrior Mehtab Singh through great trouble and risk. Nawab Zakaria Khan orders for him to be tortured and killed on the Charkri, but first throw him in the cell and let him meet with Taru Singh. Bhai Mehtab Singh's only hope was to see his brother, which he did. They meet each other one last time in this world before their Shaheedi sacrifices. They embrace and hold true their promise that when their time comes to die, to sacrifice, to give Shaheedi, it will come together, and it did. Bhai Taru Singh Ji is humbled. Bhai Mehtab Singh came at this time to fulfill the words spoken when they would break bread together and eat from that one batta. Bhai Mehtab Singh was taken and tortured and crushed to death on the heavy stone wheels, the Charkriya, and he was made Shaheed. Bhai Ratan Singh Ji writes, Tan Janam, Tan Karam, Un Sikhan Rak Siralai. Tan Janam, blessed is the birth, Tan Karam, and blessed are the deeds and the Karam of this warrior, whom for the sake of Sikhi gave his life and sacrificed his everything, his head. Taru Singh sun khush payo, Singh charat chak shatab. On hearing this by Mehtab Singh, that Bhai Mehtab Singh was made Shaheed, Bhai Taru Singh Ji was ecstatic and so happy. Bhai Mehtab Singh with great enthusiasm gained his Shaheedi. With utmost glee and happiness, he was doing jakare and battle cries, Akal, Akal, Sat Sri Akal, Sat Sri Akal, Gurbare Akal. And within such happiness, he was made Shaheed. Bhai Taru Singh Ji was so happy for Mehtab Singh. For our love and our promise, he came and gave his Shaheedi at the time of death when everyone leaves your side. But not these warriors, not Mehtab Singh. Mehtab Singh left everything to be with his brother in the time of death, at the time of Shaheedi. Bhai Taru Singh Ji praises Bhai Mehtab Singh, saying, Tan hai Bhai Mehtab Singh, who gave such a great Shaheedi, and he sings his upma, his praise. This is how Jathedar Mehtab Singh Ji, Nihang Singh Ji obtained their Shaheedi. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.